all know, we're 8 days to the general elections in Nigeria, to February 25th. And it's a very important election in Nigeria's history. And we're at the point in our country where our democracy must thrive. And for our democracy to thrive, our votes must count. For our votes to count, we have to be sure that INEC is ready to take those votes and make them count. And so this evening, we're having a conversation with the Director of Voters Education of INEC. But before we go into today's session, and I'm sure you're all raring to go, I see more than 100 people on Zoom already, and I'm sure on other platforms. I just want to yield the floor to Mr. Abiola Owaje, who's the National Association's Capone, for his opening remarks. Mr. Owaje, please.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you. Our special guest, Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee, the Independent National Electoral Commission, Barrister Festus Okoye, the moderator, Abiodun Bayewu, gentlemen of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to welcome you to this important event tagged Question Time with INEC's National Commissioner for Information and Voter Education Committee, Barrister Festus Okoye. This event, under the auspices of our Votes Count, an initiative of the National Association of Sea Dogs Pirates Confraternity, was conceived as a mass awareness and education program for the electorate as part of our concerted effort to ensure votes count in Nigeria elections. As an international social advocacy and human rights organization, the Pirates Confraternity is determined to deepen democracy by nurturing a politically active and participatory electorate that understands the power of the ballot and is willing to deploy the same to elect leaders for the overall benefit of the country. Regrettably, previous elections in Nigeria, especially general elections, have been problematic. Cases of fierce violence, ballot snatching, ballot stuffing, falsification of results, kidnap of electoral officers, and in some cases, killing of voters and ad hoc electoral officers have been stories that dominate the headlines in the media whenever we hold elections in Nigeria. The grim implication of the climate of fear, that's borrowing in our Nobel laureate, Professor Wole Soyinka's word, surrounding Nigeria's election has instigated voter apathy. Apathy is actually an original Greek word which means without feelings. This was used by French poet Victor Marie Hugo, who described the apathetic as the living dead. According to him, they are alive but without feelings, so they are not living. This set of people who have chosen to remain quote-unquote dead to elections in Nigeria for their own safety have robbed Nigeria of quality representation at all levels. Data obtained from the Electoral Institute, INEC Abuja, gave the following as voters turnout in Nigeria elections. We have 57.49% in 2007, 53.68% in 2011, and 43.65% in 2015. In the 2019 general election, INEC data revealed that the figure went down to 35%. This means out of the 82 million registered voters in 2019, only just over 28 million turned out to vote. It is important to note that Nigeria's electoral body, worried about this trend, had gone back to the drawing board to introduce technology and advocated for a constitutional framework through the Electoral Act to improve Nigeria's electoral process. The smart card readers, which sparked controversy in the 2015 general election and subsequent off-season elections in Kogi and Bayelsa states, has been replaced by the bimodal voters accreditation system called BVAS. Not only that, the electronic transmission of results from polling units and the real-time uploading of INEC's portal has instilled a level of confidence in INEC's ability to conduct credible, free, and fair elections in Nigeria. The governorship elections in Edo, and Ekiti states, and the recent one in Osun are indicators that our conduct of elections in Nigeria is improving. and the aftermath of also provided evidence that BVAS works as intended. However, it's not yet uhuru. The vast improvement in INEC's conduct of elections will pale into insignificance if a major segment of the electorate still maintain the indifference posture towards elections. To change this narrative, we have in the past few weeks, through the Avoked Scout team, dedicated resources to push for collection of permanent voters card PVCs by Nigerians. We had deployed a monitoring team that reported hiccups and anomalies, which were brought to the attention of the relevant authorities for resolution. This event is a continuation of that effort to ensure the electorate are sufficiently educated on the steps to take to exercise their franchise in the forthcoming elections and elect leaders of their own choice. It is pertinent to reiterate that the Pirates Confraternity is non-political and non-partisan. We are not affiliated to any political party, neither have we had a preferred candidate in previous elections in Nigeria, nor do we have one in the upcoming elections. Our focus is to support INEC in whatever way to ensure it conducts a free, fair, transparent, and credible 2023 elections in Nigeria. Our guest, Barrister Festus Okoye, is not new to election management in Nigeria. Prior to his appointment in INEC, Barrister Okoye, as then president of Transition Monitoring Group, TMG, pushed for reforms in our electoral process to empower the electorate in the voting process. Having him here gives me the confidence that we are all going to leave here more educated and adequately informed on our expectations to exercise our franchise in the forthcoming elections. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Owaje. And to get the ball rolling and for us to quickly get into the conversation with Mr. Okoye, I'd like to first introduce Mr. Okoye to those who do not know him. I'm very doubtful at any point, at this point in time, that any Nigerian over the age of 18 doesn't know Mr. Okoye. But then I'll go ahead and just read your biography briefly, if you will, Mr. Okoye. So Mr. Okoye, or Barrister Okoye, Barrister Festus Okoye is a barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. He holds a Bachelor of Laws from the University of Jos and was called to the Nigerian bar in 1985. Between 1993 and 1994, he undertook a graduate program in international human rights law at the University of Minnesota as a Humphrey Fellow. He served as General Secretary of the National Association of Nigerian Student NANS from 1982 to 1983, and the chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association, Kaduna branch, between 1997, and was elected National Publicity Secretary of the Nigerian Bar Association in 1997 as well. In 2006, he attended a course on democracy and elections, challenges of the 21st century at the American University Center for Democracy and Election Management. Between 2002 and 2006, Mr. Okoye served as the chair of the Transition Monitoring Group, which Mr. Owaje had alluded to. The Transition Monitoring Group, if you all will recall, is a coalition of Nigerian civil society groups instrumental in ensuring credible elections. He also served as executive director of the Human Rights Monitor and the national coordinator of the Independent Election Monitoring Group between 2006 and 2018. He is a member of the Electoral Reform Committee. He was a member of the Electoral Reform Committee in 2007 and served as civil society delegate in 2014 at the National Conference. He also served in the INEC Committee on Review of Judgments on Election Petition Cases in 2013 and on the Committee on the Management of Election Petitions in 2015. Mr. Okoye also served in the General Abisoye Civil Disturbance Just panel in 2008. And in 1992, he received the Human Rights Watch Award for courageous work in researching, monitoring, and documenting human rights violations in Nigeria. He was appointed a National Commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission in July 2018 and is currently the chairman of Information and Voters Education Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, Barrister Festus Okoye. You're very welcome, Barrister Okoye. You're muted, sir.
I'm
Okay.
here.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, sir. Well, first of all, I think the first question and the most pertinent questions in the minds of most Nigerians is, how ready is INEC for elections? We're in a very contentious season in our national life, and the context in which elections are holding currently one of the most contentious elections in our national history. How ready is INEC? We need to be confident INEC is ready.
I want to say confidently that we are ready. As far as this commission is concerned, we are not aware that the election is contentious. As far as the commission is concerned, we remain within the context and ambit of our mandate. And the mandate of the commission is to organize, undertake, and supervise election. And that's exactly what we are doing. Now, the commission started preparing for the 2023 general election the moment we finished conducting the 2019 general election. So we have planned, and we have planned well. Now, what are those things that we have done to assure Nigerians that we are on top of our situation and on top of the game? One, when we came on board, we found out that the country had a total of 119,974 polling units. And these polling units were established in 1996, when the country had just slightly above 50 million registered voters. The country went into the 2019 general election with a total registered voter population of over 84 million, with the same number of polling units. So what the commission did was to create what we call voting points and voting point settlements in order to avoid the difficulty caused by the congestion in polling units. So this commission decided to convert all the voting points and voting point settlements into full-fledged polling units. And that's why, as of today, we have a total of 176,846 polling units. We also removed these polling units away from houses of traditional rulers. Some of the polling units were in places of religious worship. Some of them were in forests. Some of them were in shrines and so on. So we removed all these polling units from places we consider inappropriate. Not only that, we also decided to take some of the polling units closer to the people so that pregnant women can access these polling units easily, so that persons with disability can access these polling units, so that the elderly can access these polling units, and other persons with different vulnerabilities can access these polling units. So that was the first thing we did. The second thing we did was to resume the continuous mass registration exercise to enable those who have attained the age of 18 between the last registration exercise in 2018 and when we started the continuous voters registration exercise again in 2021. So on the 28th day of June 2021, we opened a portal for pre-registration for new voters and those who have never registered before. And so many Nigerians visited our portal and did their pre-registration before going to the registration centers to go and capture their biometrics. We also introduced a new voter enrollment device called the IVED, which is the INEC voter enrollment device. And this voter enrollment device was able to capture people's fingerprints and also capture their facials. So based on this, we had a number of young men and women registering as new voters for the purposes of the 2023 general election. The next thing we did was to impute more concretely and more comprehensively the technology in the electoral process. We created what we call the candidates nomination portal, through which political parties, the moment they are done with their party primaries, they upload the list and personal particulars of their nominated candidates to this INEC candidates nomination portal. What this did was that it prevented political parties from besieging the offices of the Independent National Electoral Commission to come and submit their candidates lists and nomination forms. Brought to this particular period, the challenge was that a political party will have 3 factions at the state level, we have 2 factions at the national level. On the day of the submission of candidates nomination list and particulars, all of them will come to the headquarters of the commission to come and fight. So what we did was that we now gave a code, an access code to only the national chairman of the 18 registered political parties, and they use this code to upload the list and personal particulars of their nominated candidates. We also did the same thing for domestic elections. We did the same thing for the media, and also we did the same thing for pool agents, or those we normally call the party agents. We also decided that it was important for us to replace the smart card reader with newer version of technology that can capture the fingerprint and capture the faces. And that was why we introduced the BVAS, or the bimodal voter accreditation system, for purposes of voter verification and voter authentication. Now, for the purposes of this election, what is it that we have done as of today to assure Nigerians that we are ready for this election? As I pointed out, we have a total of 176,846 polling units in Nigeria. And we also have a total of 8,809 registration areas and 774 local government areas. We have deployed the BVAS for these 176,846 polling units. We have also acquired redundancies for the 8,809 registration areas and the 774 local governments. And we have tested them to be sure that they're fit for purpose. And we also carried out mock accreditation the 4th day of February 2023. Why did we do the mock accreditation? We did upgrade to both the hardware and software of the BVAS. So we wanted to be sure that the upgrade we did was properly done. And we are satisfied with the result from the mock accreditation. The BVAS has also been configured ready for the 2023 general election. Not only that, we have also, as we are aware, as of today, Nigeria has a total of 93,469,008 registered voters. We have finished printing and deployed both the result sheets and the ballot papers for the presidential election to all the states of the Federation. So all these ballot papers and result sheets for presidential election are in the central bank in all the states of the Federation. We have also printed and deployed the result sheets and ballot papers for senatorial election. And we have also printed and deployed the ballot papers and result sheets for the House of Representative elections. And these are the elections that will take place on the 25th day of February 2023. So all of them are in the central bank. Part of the agreement we had with political parties, civil society groups, and organizations, and the media was that we adopt a dual approach to the storage of our sensitive election materials. So we agreed on a hybrid that they contain custody of the BVAS, while the central bank retains custody of the result sheets and ballot papers. So all the result sheets and ballot papers for the national election, the first set of election for 2023 have all been delivered, and our resident electoral commissioners and our staff in the various states have inspected these materials in the central bank. We have also batched and deployed the non-sensitive materials for this election. By non-sensitive materials, I mean the ballot boxes, the cubicles, the stampers, and the other paraphernalia required for the conduct of election. They have all been deployed. We have also finished the training of supervisory presiding officers for this election. And the training of the presiding officers and assistant presiding officers is now ongoing. Tomorrow, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission will visit some of these training centers and also visit the International Conference Center, which will serve as our situation room and national collation center. So in terms of preparation, this commission is ready for the election. And so I want to assure Nigerians that in terms of the things we are supposed to do, in terms of the things we are supposed to put in place, in terms of the things we are supposed to do, we are ready for this election. And for this election too, the commission needs at least 138,000 buses and trucks. We need at least 4,000 boats, and we need at least 88,000 motorcycles. These things are being handled at the level of the local governments by our electoral officers. But we have an MOU with the National Union of Road Transport Workers, with the National Association of Road Transport Owners, and with the Marine Workers Union of Nigeria. And we have also visited the Group CEO of NPC Limited, and they have assured us of the availability of PMS for the purposes of our movement on election day. And we have also visited and interfaced with the various leaders of the various security agencies who have assured us that they have the capacity to protect and guarantee a safe and secure environment for both the voters, for election duty staff, and also for our materials. And so in terms of preparations, we are prepared for this election.
Thank you so much, Mr. Okoye. Those were very interesting facts that you reeled out. First, I'm going to quickly encourage people to send in their questions in the Q&A chat box. If you're on Facebook, you can also send your message into the chat, and we will collate and be able to pass them on to Mr. Okoye. One of the very first questions that has come is about the 240 polling units that have been rendered redundant. So I've said to no longer be polling units. There's a lot of speculations about them, particularly because a lot of them are also in places that are considered insecure. That was this a strategy by INEC to bypass those places and not have to deal with the questions of insecurity, Mr. Okoye?
These are the polling units with no registered voters.
With no registered
voters. I pointed out that we converted voting points and voting point settlements into full-fledged polling units, bringing the total number of polling units in Nigeria to 176,846. And then we removed some of these polling units from their traditional setting, and then we took them closer to the people. During the continuous voters registration, which I pointed out started on the 28th day of June 2021 and ended on the 31st day of July 2022, we offered the new polling units to voters and asked them to choose as part of, when they are registering, that these are part of the polling units they can choose and decide to vote in those polling units. We did not want to use the powers conferred on us by law to forcefully allocate voters to some of these polling units. So out of the total registered polling units of 176,846, no individual chose 240 of these polling units located in 28 states of the Federation. Both Imo State and Taraba State have the highest number of polling units where nobody agreed to voting. So what we have done is to publish the total number of these polling units, state by state and local government by local government, delimitation area by delimitation area, and so that votes will not be returned from these polling units. They remain polling units for the purposes of elections in Nigeria, but for the 2023 general election, nobody will vote from any of these polling units because no individual chose any of these polling units for the purposes of election. So we have these polling units in these 0 polling units in 28 states of the Federation, but Taraba and the Imo have the highest number of polling units where we have 0 registered voters, but they remain polling units within the context of elections in Nigeria. But we are not going to return votes from them for 2023 because it does not have voters.
Oh, well, thank you, Mr. Okoye, for that. Again, like I said, there's a lot of questions around why these polling units have been abandoned. You've mentioned Imo State, and we know of the insecurity, particularly around the communities that are named there that have been abandoned. The polling units have been abandoned. But a very quick logistical question. Now, more than 93 million Nigerians registered to vote, and the collection of PVCs ended on the 5th. Can you hazard a guess as to how many PVCs have been left uncollected so far?
It will be dangerous for me to hazard a guess at this point in time.
But a rough estimate.
No. This is because the PVC collection took place at the registration areas. And as I pointed out, we have 8,809 registration areas in Nigeria or electoral wards. It also took place at the 774 local government areas of Nigeria. What we have done is to ask all the resident electoral commissioners to liaise with all the electoral officers in all the local governments for them to collate all the number of PVCs that have been collected and the number that have not been collected. What the commission intends to do is publish the number of PVCs collected and also publish the number of PVCs that remain uncollected. For those PVCs that have not been collected, we normally deposit the uncollected PVCs with the central bank pending the conclusion of election and the resumption of the CVR. And so we are going to make available to Nigerians the number of PVCs that have been collected and the number of PVCs that remains uncollected and the number of PVCs we have deposited with the central bank pending the conclusion of the 2023 general election.
When are we going to learn this information?
We have a commission meeting tomorrow. All the national commissioners of the Independent National Electoral Commission, the 12 of them, all were out there in the field on what we call readiness assessments and assurance. Return from the states I supervised today, and some other national commissioners are just returning. Some of them are going to come in the morning, but we have a meeting of the independent, a meeting of the commission tomorrow. And at that particular meeting, we will take a holistic view and of the state of our readiness, state by state. And then I will find out whether the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission has received returns in terms of PVCs collected and those that have not been collected from the various states. We have been away for almost a week in the states we supervise, and that's exactly why I don't have that information as of today. They hopefully may be in a position that information tomorrow in terms of when we are going to release number of PVCs collected and those that remain uncollected.
That remain uncollected. Okay, yes. Well, thank you, Mr. Okoye. We will take the excuse that you have been away, but we think that by now INEC should be automated enough to have those records almost immediately. And it's a very important way to build trust. And one of the other trust questions that is a reason, and people are asking about.
Let me just say this before you proceed. You see, the Independent National Electoral Commission is a commission. Yes. For such big issues, the commission as a commission must endorse the figure that have been brought out from the field. When the commission endorses it, it now becomes a decision of the commission. It now becomes a document of the commission before it can go out. Such things cannot just come in and then the chairman will release it, because the Independent National Electoral Commission, or the commission, is made up of the chairman and 12 national commissioners. And these are the policymakers that endorse critical issues and critical decisions and release critical documents with the print commission. That's why the chairman, even if he gets the information, will not release it until the commission has taken a decision to release the information.
Okay, thank you so much, Barrister Okoye. And that question was important to ask that question because the next question that a lot of people are asking about is also about the beavers. And Mr. Apuye, for example, asked a question that INEC says they will release ballot papers according to the number of PVCs collected in each polling unit. Is the beavers going to be configured only for those who collected their PVCs? If not, how do you deal with persons who are currently cloning PVCs with their VIN numbers gotten from their temporary slip during registration? I think that a lot of this distrust also rises from the Osun case, and it would really be helpful if you throw more light into
that. I pointed out that as of today, we have 93,069,008 registered voters. The ballot papers will be printed in accordance with the number of registered voters. That's one.
Not in accordance with the of collected PVCs.
No. We don't operate that way. It's in accordance with number of registered voters. Secondly, the law as of today, if you look at section 47 of the Electoral Act, every registered voter who approaches the polling unit on election day must go to our polling units with our PVC. In other words, the voter must attend the polling unit personally and must also attend the polling unit with his or her permanent voter's card. Section 47, subsection 2 of the Electoral Act has also made mandatory that every registered voter must go through a process of verification and accreditation using the BVAS. Now, for the purposes of the BVAS will be configured in accordance with registered voters in each polling unit. So each BVAS for each polling unit will only have the names, data, and personal particulars of voters who are registered in that particular polling unit. In other words, you cannot take the BVAS meant for a particular polling unit to a different polling unit because it will not have the names of the registered voters in that polling unit. So the BVAS does two things. It is either it authenticates your fingerprints, and if it doesn't authenticate one, it will authenticate this one. The 10 of them fail. Then it will use your face or your facials for purposes of verification and authentication. And the BVAS reads the contours of the face. So your 10 fingerprints cannot fail, your face cannot fail. If both of them fail, what that means is that you are engaged in identity theft and we are not going to allow you to vote. So that is the way we are going to operate. Law is that for purposes of overvoting in the election, the number of accredited voters will be used to measure the issue of overvoting in any election. So if, for instance, in a polling unit, we have 1,000 registered voters, and 500 of those voters were accredited using the BVAS. And then when the ballots are counted, we find 501 votes in the ballot box. What that means is that there has been an overvoting by one. Prior to the introduction of the BVAS, we use the measure of overvoting is the number of registered voters in the voters register and not the number of accredited voters. So this is what the BVAS has done. The BVAS is not the game changer in this election. It's also the ultimate arbiter. Now, the people who are collecting the last 6 digits of the VIN number, that is the voter identification number, are engaged in an exercise in futility. This is because the display of the voters register for objections in accordance with section 19 and 20 of the Electoral Act. We published the VIN number of all the registered voters in all the resource areas and in the local governments. So why go and buy something that is there on the wall in all our 704 offices and in the 8,809 registration areas? So if you clone the PVC, for instance, you can not clone people's fingerprints and you cannot clone people's face. So whatever cloning people are doing and whatever manipulation people are doing, they can only engage in voter suppression. That's the only thing they can do. You can only buy somebody's PVC and prevent the person from coming to the polling unit on election day. But in terms of buying the PVC and giving to somebody else to come and use the PVC to come and vote, that is next to impossibility because the BVAS will not read their fingerprint and it will not read their facials. And so it's an exercise in futility in my own view.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Okoye. Do we also hear INEC say that they will rectify the kind of errors that were made in Osun State?
It was better.
Sir?
I didn't get the issue raised.
So I said that, are we hearing from you that INEC will ensure that they do not make the same errors they made in Osun State with the BVAS and accreditation?
You know, as a matter of fact, a very senior lawyer, And as a very, very senior, I should be very, very circumspect and very careful about commenting on a live issue that is pending before the Court of Appeal. I will err on the side of caution by just saying that as an electoral management body, we are not dogmatic about issues. We are not puritanical about issues. We believe that even as a commission, that we have weaknesses and we make mistakes. What we have done consistently has been, one, to improve with every election. Two, to learn lessons with every election. So we normally ask the question after every by-election or off-cycle election. We ask the question, what are those things we did so well that we don't need to reinvent the wheel and add anything to it? Then we ask the second question, what are those things we did well, but we didn't do so well that we need to improve on? And then we question, what are those things we did so badly that we need to throw away and design a new pathway and a new framework on how to overcome whatever challenges we have? That's the way we proceed. So what I'm saying is that as a lawyer, I have read the judgment. The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission has read the judgment. National commissioners have read the judgment. And we prefer to wait and see and hear what the Court of Appeal will do and say, and then possibly what position the Supreme Court will take in relation to the matter. But if there are issues arising from that particular judgment in terms of upgrade of the beavers and also in terms of improving the functionality of the beavers, we have learned what lessons there are to be learned, and we await the judgment and decision of the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal.
I think what's important in Nigeria is that INEC continues to learn and improve and has an active learning pattern. And I think the next question, I think you've already answered, that which fingers do you print on the ballot papers with and beavers? It's your index finger or your thumb. Both are viable. I just want for you to confirm that again.
Them are viable for the purposes of the beavers.
All 10 are viable for beavers?
Yes, during voters registration, we captured the 10 fingers. So if they use this one, it fails. They use this one, if it fails, we use this one until we exhaust the 10 of them. If we exhaust the 10 of them and it doesn't work, then we will go to your face and then capture your face. If that one doesn't work, you go home.
You go home or you go arrested. If you've cut both hands and they don't belong to the face or to the person or to the name, you allow this person attempting an anomaly to go home? Or hand them to law enforcement?
Our first response is you to go home. It is when you refuse to go home that a presiding officer will now fill the necessary form, and then you'll be somebody who has been taken away from the unit, and then you end up in a detention facility.
Okay. So what, I know you've spoken about the security agents say that they are ready to provide security. And I've always said that Nigeria's elections are highly securitized. But how do we ensure people that it is safe to vote on the 25th? I particularly think about women and persons with disability, and they're worried about security as well. How do we ensure that people feel safe enough to come out and cast their votes on the 25th and 11th?
The Commission has a tradition of a quarterly consultative meeting with the critical stakeholders in the electoral process. And one of those critical stakeholders are the security agencies. And so we have what we call the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security at the national level, headed by the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission and co-chaired by the National Security Advisor. It's made up of all the heads of all the security agencies in Nigeria. At the state level, that same organ is replicated at the state level and is headed by the Electoral Commissioner for East State. And the Commissioner of Police for East State is the co-chair. At the level of the local governments, the electoral officer for each local government is the chair, and the DPO for local government is the co-chair of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security. have been meeting very regularly. And we've received assurances. In fact, in some states of the Federation, the various security agencies are already doing a show of force to give people the hope and assure people that they can come out on election day to vote and that their votes will be safe. On election day, we are going to have unarmed security personnel at the level of the police. But at the outer cordon, we are going to have security personnel at the outer cordon. And then we are going to also very serious rules. And then the military are also going to guard us and the entrance and exit out of each state of the Federation to make sure that nothing untoward and that forces that do not electoral process well do not penetrate the state and begin to disrupt the electoral process. So we have the assurances of the security agencies that they have the capacity and they have the will and the ability to guarantee a safe environment for the voters, for election duty personnel, and also for election materials.
No, thank you, Mr. Okoye. Now, for a lot of voters as well, or potential voters or people who register, there's been a crop of people who said that in spite of the extension to the 5th, that their cards were not found. They've got their VIN, having been accredited with the beavers, will they be allowed to vote based on their fingerprints and their facial impressions?
My advice, based on Section 47, subsection 1 of the Electoral Act, is that any individual that doesn't have should not even attempt to visit any of our polling units on election day. It is mandatory and very clear. There's no ambiguity in the law. You must have our permanent voters card before you'll be allowed to vote. The law gives the Independent National Electoral Commission the exclusive right and exclusive responsibility to design and determine what is a permanent voter's card. Now, the continuous voter registration exercise that was carried out between the 28th day of June 2021 and which ended on the 31st day of July 2022 was for those who have never registered before and those who just attained 18. Those are the ones who are supposed to register. We also window for persons who wish to transfer from one place to the other. For instance, if you live in Lagos and you've been transferred, you can transfer your registration from Lagos to Kaduna State and Kaduna North Local Government, for instance. We also provided a window for those who have lost their permanent voters' cards or those whose cards are defaced, for them to also ask for a reprint or a replacement. But the challenge we had was that people, so many of our compatriots thought it was business. Some of them thought it was business as usual. We made it very clear that if you have registered before, because we already had over 84 million registered voters whose names are in the base. We made it very clear that if you have registered before, you don't have to register afresh. But some people, either out of ignorance or because they were deceived, claim that all the PVCs we issued in 2021 or from 2021 have expired. So based on that, they went and registered afresh. When names, their personal particulars were already in our database. So because we have an automated biometric identification system, it identified all these double and multiple registrants and removed their second registration. So we also had some people who were supposed to do transfer, whose PVCs were lost. When they go to registration center, rather than ask for transfer, or rather than ask for reprint of their PVCs, registered afresh. All these ones, their second registration were deleted from our database. Was that the first registration, we left it valid. So these people constitute over 2.8 million that we remove from our database. So we print their cards. So even if they go to the our local government collection centers to go and collect their PVCs, they will see it there because they engage in double or multiple registration. But I want to acknowledge that there were persons we did not print their cards out of fault. What it was that we harvested the name data of all these individuals, we database, and when we tracked them to the various states and the various states, they were people who lost their cars in arson attacks in our offices. We reprinted the cards of these categories of persons and also took them to the various local governments, and most of them have collected their cards. So that is where we are as of today. So sometimes when you hear people saying, "Oh, my card was not printed, I have been disenfranchised," some of them engaged in double and multiple registration, and that was why cards.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Okoye. But then you will also recall that a woman was arrested in the southeast, I think it was in a number of Enugu states, who was selling the cards, who was extorting cards from people who wanted to collect their cards. And it's not just in the southeast. We've had to also report that in Nasarawa State that has occurred. Now, in those instances, people truly, genuinely have their cards printed by INEC, but do not have access to those cards because of those who went into the system and tried to extort money based on that. How do we also deal with those issues? Because genuinely, those people will be disenfranchised. I know that's no, please go on.
This first issue you raised, this first issue you raised, incident took place in Enugu State.
Enugu, yes,
what
that was
we did was, yes, the resident electoral commissioner immediately swung into action and invited our entire staff from that particular local government area where this incident took place and interrogated them. Then the woman in question was arrested, and we found out that she was the staff of the commission. The staff of the commission gave her those cards. So the commission was arrested, and the woman was also arrested, and both of them were charged. Were charged to court, and the case is already. This commission has zero tolerance for electoral malfeasance and has zero tolerance for our staff who engage in a act that brings some level of dispute to the electoral process. Even during the first registration exercise, some of our staff that registered underage individuals, some of our staff that engage in things that are untoward in malicious registration are put in that are undergoing disciplinary proceedings with commission. And the moment we are done with this, if we found them to have violated their code of conduct, we will course of the law. And if we find out that they have also breached the Electoral Act, we will prosecute them because the commission has the power to prosecute electoral offenses and electoral acts. And so with this commission has zero tolerance for electoral malfeasance. And any of our staff that has been engaged in some of these things, we do not hesitate to deal with the person. But let me also point out, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission has been very consistent, has gone to the National Assembly, has canvassed the setting up of an Electoral Offenses Commission and Tribunal in different places, that time has come for us to break the cycle of impunity in this country, because some of the electoral offenders are our own staff. And you agree with me that it will be unfair on the commission for us to be asked to be prosecuting our staff. We want a situation where an independent and separate organ of government or a different agency or commission, we take charge of the arrest, the investigation and prosecution of electoral offenders. We believe that this is the way to go, and we believe that the time the full weight of the law must be brought to bear on those who try to corrupt the electoral process and to try to bring our electoral process into disrepute.
Thank you so much, sir. Talking about your staff, they're very critical in ensuring free and fair elections. So while we are concerned about those who are fraudulent, we're also concerned about their safety. A lot of INEC offices have also been vandalized, arsoned in recent months. You've lost more than 100 there've been more than 134 attacks on INEC officers. And it's very concerning the security of electoral officers on election day and post-election. How do we ensure the security, especially in very vulnerable states, are very, very vulnerable, in Anambra, in Imo, in Zamfara, and places like that? How do we ensure that INEC staff are not put necessarily at risk? There's also the rumor that you're considering no longer using youth corpers and also professors as returning officers. So it would be interesting to hear your comments on those.
I just came back from Anambra and Abia State. To assure you and assure the nation, the bulk of our presiding officers are going to be core members. Some of them on the 14th of this month. We also gave them training in the various camps. So core members are going to be the presidents in this election. The assistant presiding officer want federal tertiary institutions from the students in their penultimate year. So the assistant presiding officer 1, 2, and we last 2 weeks, the chairman held a meeting, vice chancellors of federal tertiary institutions to serve as collations and returning officers. And they have asked to submit the list of professors and lecturers in their departments or in their universities, I beg your pardon, who are going to act as collations. So the issue of abandoning the use of university lecturer collation and returning officers just fake news. Some people are just being misused. We never discuss particular information. In some cases of cycle elections that we conducted, we used RA collation officers. But those off-cycle elections, those are not big elections. So we can pull from contiguous state and contiguous local government into a particular electoral process of cycle election. Relation to safety staff, that this commission places premium safety and welfare of the ad hoc staff. We have active insurance for all the ad hoc staff that will participate in this action. But you will like with me that no quantum, no amount of and category will cover for a single life. So in terms of our various offices as of today, the security has been beefed up in our offices, and security has also been beefed up in our local government offices, ready for the receipt of critical election materials. We are with various agencies in terms of deployment. We are kept in the loop. We've been taking into consideration in the various situational areas, in the various governments, and also in the various of the federation. And so I said we are not. I think that not be telling the truth. We are concerned about the security situation in some states of the federation, some local government areas, and in some communities. We also have our own mechanism of gathering information. Work with the security of deployment of election personnel and also election materials. And so I want to show you our staff.
Thank you so much.
The commission will do that.
Wouldn't do that. Well, thank you so much, sir. But as you know, security is one of the is a top issue in Nigeria and has been for a few years now. And so we will still have questions on security. One of the questions people are asking about is, of course, then what happens with the riverine areas at this material point in time? Do we have sufficient security? We will continue to ask that question in the riverine areas. Now, there's also been a lot of violence in a number of states. How do we ensure that the outbreak of violence, the attempts by people to incite violence on election day will not affect elections on the 25th? And are there, how exactly are we sure? I mean, it's one thing to be told, don't worry, we're ready. And another thing to see that security-wise, that we're truly ready for the elections. It's a big question for Nigerians.
In terms of the riverine areas, riverine areas in places like Ondo, in Bayelsa, in Rivers, in Anambra, and in other states of the federation, our and resident electoral commissioners that they require over 4,000 votes for the riverine areas. Not only that, we collaborate with the Nigerian Navy. They use boats to protect our election officers on the seas. Because if you're going to Southern Niger, you cannot just and stay for possibly over 2 hours on the high seas with protection. So the Nigerian Navy use their gunboats to and also protect our materials. In some others, we also utilize the services of the Nigerian Air Force to ferry our personnel and also ferry our materials across a very difficult terrain. So pay attention to that. The issue of you will tell me that the need of the Independent National Electoral Commission is undertaken we clear that before we carry out the local government or even at the state level, give the necessary and the requisite notice for campaigns. There has been statements that have been made by people. We've also had high rhetorics around this election that have the capacity and the tendency to create fear, anxiety in the minds of people. Also, political campaigns on violence. We are preventing some of these issues and opening them. Also, working with security relations. The Inspector General of Police premises the various policies are not in relation the food of the law will be on that ages in inciting and insightful language. But that we continue with security agencies, school leaders, that spirit, that democratic spirit that allows them to do things and civilize, pander to the conduct of election is a shared responsibility. Is a multi-stakeholder. All of us must do to work, because if you carry out activity out of the day, you cannot reap the benefits accrue in the is everybody live governed by the nobody wants where the population are on exile and in refugee.
Well, thank you, Mr. Okoye. I suspect that your internet is wavering a bit because I keep losing you in some parts. I'm not sure why. Yeah, it's clear now. So I think maybe it also needed for you to rest a little. I know that we're throwing the questions hard and fast, and forgive us, but we love this country and we just need to get this right. I'll go to a softer question before I come back again to other security concerns that people have. And it's about funding. We're 8 days to election. So please, could you clarify news making the rounds that INEC is yet to receive that could you just clarify that INEC is yet to receive cash for elections, whether hard copy or soft copy cash for elections, and and how may this impact the elections?
I need to put this in context.
Yes, please.
The procurement of the beavers took so much money, and we have procured the beavers, we've tested the beavers, we've configured the beavers, and the beavers are in safe locations, waiting for deployment. The ballot papers for national election, presidential and national assembly elections have been printed and have been deployed to the various central bank offices throughout in the result. To look, and they have been biased to registration area. What I should ask is, what are those things that are remaining? One, we need to pay transport provider for providing their transport. To prepare our registration area center, where we normally have ad hoc staff overnight before they are the first light on Saturday of the election day. To pay the ad hoc staff their stipend. We also need we need money for this. We need to buy water for the for staff, and we need cash for all this. What we have done is that we had a meeting with the governor of the central bank where we in terms of fuel, for our transportation requirements. And so we have tabulated quantum of cash we need for the purposes of some of these issues I have listed. The funds of the commission are with the central bank. So what we are saying is that for these bus vehicles and the other things we are going to do from now to the election day, we need cash for it. So we have sent our cash requirements to the, but as I told you, I just came back. I don't know whether the central bank has met the cash requirements of the commission for these issues that I have. Some issues that need the paper, the hardcore, we need to pay with
the hard copy
one-on-one and not by transfer.
Hard copy money. The vocabulary we build around elections in Nigeria is always fascinating. Hard copy money. But having said all of that, Mr. Okoye, and these are very important logistic issues, it also goes back again to ensuring the safety and the logistical smoothness of elections themselves. And there's also you had alluded to working with transport workers, but specifically the ones that Nigerians are concerned about is Road Transport Workers Union. Now, why would the commission need to partner with Road Transport Workers Union, call them the NOTW, to procure buses for elections? Can't INEC procure or lease buses from the 340 billion that's been made available? Will we be getting it right, franchising the logistics, transportation logistics to Road Transport Workers Union?
I don't want to be very, very pedantic. There has been suggestion that we should lease this into logistic companies. The question we should ask is, who are the owners of some of these logistic companies? Some of these companies are politicians. So we are very, very careful about that. Secondly, what is it? What do we have with the National Union of Road Transport Workers and the National Association of Road Transport Owners? The National Union of Road Transport Workers do not have vehicles. They are a union. Those who have vehicles are the individual drivers. So we enter into one-on-one and one-on-one contracts with the individual owners of these vehicles. What we have with the National Union of Road Transport Workers is a memorandum of understanding. And in that memorandum, we give them a certain percentage for them to assist the commission in supervising their drivers. So if, for instance, in a particular local government, we hired 1,000 vehicles, 100 vehicles, and these vehicles have been inspected and certified by the Federal Road Safety Commission. And on election day, 70 turn up and we don't see the remaining 30. What we do is that we embed the leadership of the National Union of Road Transport Workers at the local level in our office. They are the ones who know these drivers. They are the ones who have their telephone numbers. So if any one of them has refused to turn up, we call the union to call their member and ask the member to report to turn up. But we sign individual contract with each vehicle, each driver. And so we do. It is not as if the union provides vehicles for us. No, we get the individual drivers to provide these vehicles. We have an understanding, union, to assist in making sure that members of their union that we have engaged turn up on election day and carry out their contractual obligations with the commission.
To ask again, where are we procuring these buses from? When we say individual buses, because Nigeria's the biggest fear of Nigerians is the process being hijacked, and there's still some distrust for Road Transport Workers Union as a union itself, and the antecedent that they have. So that's still a big question for Nigerians. So we're not hiring the buses from them. So where are the buses coming from? They're driving the buses.
No, the buses are from individual drivers. Let us not heighten this. This was the same arrangement in 2015. This has been the same arrangement in 2019. In all the off-cycle elections that we conducted, this is the same arrangement. We finished conducting election in Ekiti. It was the same arrangement. We did election in Osun. It is the same arrangement. We did election in Ondo. It was the same arrangement. We carried out election in Edo. It is the same arrangement with each individual driver. But as at this moment, the individual drivers will not only sign a contract with us, they will also swear to an oath of neutrality. Because the Electoral Act 2022 says that every person who is going to be on duty, including police officers, including national commissioners of the commission, subscribe to oath of neutrality. So they're going to contract with us and oath of neutrality. I think it's too late in the day for us to reinvent. I pointed out to you that we are going to hire 138,000 buses and trucks. We are going to hire 4,000 boats, and we are going to hire at least 88,000 motorcycles. There are also some communities in this country where the commission also hires human carriers to take people up the hill. So it's the geography of Nigeria and the topography of Nigeria can be said to be very dangerous. And so we consider the geography of each state of the country, and then we use that to make projections on what lead. There was a time the commission was buying boats. And if some of our offices, you will see because the commission are acquired. I do not think that the commission has the capacity to acquire 138,000, and we also do not have the skill and the wherewithal to go to logistic companies and begin to investigate the ownership of some of these logistic companies. At the end of the day, when you find out that one of the logistics companies that we have contracted, for instance, owned by a politician who is a candidate in the election, it will make a nonsense of the entire efforts we are making. So what is important is for us to be vigilant to make sure that the individual drivers we hire turn up on time, pay our buses, and also carry our personnel to location. Now, the political parties must also do their own bit. Section 43 electoral obligates every registered political party, polling agent or party agent to the 176 states. It also obligates them to also the distribution of election materials from every point office, the local governments, to the registration areas and to the polling units. So if, for instance, when we out the ballot paper, political 18 individuals, 18 political parties is the materials from that point to a particular local government. From the local rack centers, from the rack centers, nothing will go wrong. So people should also do their own bit. Political parties should also, it is by everybody doing their own bit that we can engage in mandate protection.
I agree with you, Sides, and everybody doing their own bits. And the attempt was not to put you on the spot on this question. I think that people were particularly concerned when MC Olomo came out and announced himself as a viable partner for INEC. I'm like, okay, INEC, let us know which of the Road Transport Workers Union you're working with and how that arrangement is running down, especially when we know that is a very, very partisan person. I'm going to go back quickly to the issue of security. There's always a question about ballot snatching at the end of the day, that what happens in this particular election if ballots are snatched and are burnt like that, some of them were in 2019. How do we discourage this? I know that, yes, we've got security personnel, and you said we'll have non-uniform security personnel. How do we also, because however tight INEC system is right now, you will also have ad hoc staff that may be unscrupulous. It's always the black sheep and the bad eggs that give the entire mission a bad name. How do we also help to ensure that we minimize to the barest attempts at fraud, at undermining the process, whether it's INEC staff, whether it's Road Transport Workers Union, whether it is those monitoring elections, because sometimes even though they can be compromised?
My own personal experience is that election riggers normal communities where people do not engage in mandate communities riggers avoid consistently, and these communities that are very, very vigilant and where people pay attention as it goes on at the level of the polling units. Now, for the purposes of the 2023 general election, the law has made it mandatory that we should use the basis of voter verification. And Section 50, Section 60, and Section 64 made it mandatory that the Commission shall transmit polling unit level results to the INEC result viewing portal. And by polling unit level result, PC8A, which is what we call the polling unit level results. What we do is that we scan images of that result sheet. For the purposes of the 2023 general, we're also going to transmit the accreditation data for each unit to our INEC result vehicle. Not only that, the presiding officer is also under a legal obligation to take the signed copy of Form EC8A together with the BVAS itself to the registration area collation center, where it will be handed over to the collation officer for that particular registration area. It is possible that before the presiding officer gets to the collation center, that the officer will have seen the result of the polling unit and the accreditation data as electronically transmitted. Now, if you destroy or if you snap ballot papers, it does not help you. The only thing we will is that apply our regulations and guidelines. if you prevent beavers from being to a particular polling unit, the regulation says that we should take it that voting has taken place in a particular polling unit and all the political parties. You prevent polling unit through community events. We take it that everybody in a particular polling unit has voted and all the political zero. If voting the election, the law says that a particular polling unit should be cancelled and repeated if from unit, cluster of polling units taking place has the capacity expecting the result and the return may be made. So I think that we are going to make sure that the agencies send individuals who want to disrupting the process. But our regulations and guidelines are very clear. And there are guidelines and rules on how to deal with that issue arises in our regulations and guidelines for the election 2022.
Thank you so much, sir. How do we also ensure that, because our biggest problem as a country is impunity, how is INEC also working to ensure the prosecution of electoral crimes? This will go a long way in making the future of INEC's work easier.
Well, in 20, we have a series of the various agencies on
I'm sorry, sir. I'm going to ask you to pause a bit. Your internet is wavering again. And I have a feeling if you just pause just a little and then start again, that it picks up. Okay, you may try again. It's still wavering. But try and go on, sir. We'll try and work it out.
Okay. This particular election,
it's working now.
We have had with the various that are going to post security to the some units. There will also be uniform operatives in some of these polling units. We have also had some level of partnership with them in terms of the prosecution of those who are going to be on an election. But as I pointed out, it will be irrational. It will also be helpful if we have to deal with some of these issues. And I say because from my own perspective, from my own position, some of the security operatives that are on election duty, some of them are elections are over. Some of them go back to they have made arrests on election day. And then when it is time to prosecute some of these people, you hear cases being struck out on grounds of lack of diligent prosecution. It's just because those who carried out the arrest are no longer reachable. But if we have a commission that is in charge of arrest, in charge of investigation, and also in charge of prosecution, they will have a tighter grip on cases on election, and they may even have the capacity to mobile courts to deal there and then with the electoral offense. And so I think that is to go, and that will be more impactful in our election. But so long as the power and the prosecute still remain a commission, we continue to collaborate with security agencies who have the power to investigate and arrest, and then we have the power to prosecute. We will do our best of the situation.
So you would advise then that perhaps we need to ensure that the media and citizens occupy their own offices and ensure that they continue to advocate for accountability for those who have been arrested. I think that INEC will need to be a lot more audible, in letting people know, those who have been arrested, so that we can follow this up afterwards.
Definitely, we must continue to name and shame.
To name and shame.
Electoral
yes.
process yes, We must continue to do that. As we treat electoral impunity, we continue to recycle itself, and electoral will be treated as heroes rather than as the villains they are. I think that the time has come when this show the example to the world. Nigeria is the second biggest presidential democracy in the world, and the total number of registered voters in the other 14 countries of West Africa hovers around why Nigeria voters. So when Nigeria is conducting election, gone to the believe that we have to begin to show good example how to complete fair, transparent, and inclusive elections choice. And we can do is for the democratic spirit, for our people to remain vigilant at all times. Democracy, because the democracy is the best way is the way to go, and not afford to return to any other form of government. Democratic is not people-based and people-centered.
Thank you so much, sir. I have two major questions left, I believe, at least at this point. Now, there's always conspiracy theories around elections and the things that may happen or will happen. But part of the preparedness for INEC this time around is how well equipped is INEC in the scenario, considering how highly contested these elections are. I know INEC is not thinking in terms of how contested it is, but as citizens, we have to. If there's a need for a runoff to decide the presidential elections, for example, how ready is INEC for a runoff?
The Constitution does not call it runoff.
Mm-hmm.
The Constitution calls it a second. Now, if you look at Section 134 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, it's very clear. It says, Section 134, subsection 2, says that a candidate for an election to the office of the president shall be deemed to have been duly elected. There be more than two. The highest number of votes cast at the election, and he has not less than 1/4 of the votes cast at the election, each applicants of this in the federation and the federal territory. The laws in default of a candidate securing this that there will be a second election, a period of 21 days. Now, what the commission has done and what the commission has done is to prepare for a second election when we are preparing for the first election. So the commission is ready for the election if no candidates emerge during the first ballot.
Okay. I think that the question is also about the financial.
It does not seem as if you are convinced. The commission has 1 day between the announcement of the result, reverse logistics. And by the time you are reversing the logistics back to the printers, print ballot papers and sheets, and then trucking central bank, them to the states, moving the governments, and then reverse the presiding officer, assistant presiding officer, election officers. It takes a lot of time. So what we do is that the moment for the main election, we also prepare the election in case there's no, and then for the election, they're going to they are elected.
Oh dear, sir, we can barely hear you.
And so forth. Can you hear?
I think it's back now. Yes, sir.
Yeah, now.
I think so, sir.
we are a second election if no date the additional threshold. We are on the election if two governors do not meet the constitutional threshold in section 179 of if such occur.
I'll be honest, sir, we barely heard that. The internet was messing, really messed with that. I think I would like us to come back to that question, but let's take a lighter question. There's a question about hacking of INEC server, that how sure are we that the server is protected? How sure are we as well about electronic voting and electronic transmission of results, considering how atrocious, for example, even on this call, the internet is in Nigeria? But how sure are we that these things will go smoothly? That technology will not fail INEC?
Have a hybrid to of election results. Can you hear?
It's wavering in and out. I can hear you now, sir.
What do you advise? You know, I'm not savvy, so
it's fine. It's not your fault, sir. It's not. I'm very aware of that. We have real life internet issues in Nigeria. So
now, if our ICT department, that our sure department, what we transmit as scanned images of C8A, which is under fear, not also transfer the signed copy of the results to give us the center or I don't think that I think we're nothing to about all these things. I have been and logging to see whether the internet will improve. So why not give me a few seconds to log out?
Okay, I will allow you to do that, Sam. We'll just when you come back in, we will be taking final statements from you and advice that you have for Nigerians, and we'll go back and take the issue of the security of the server and of the electronic systems. So I'll allow you to log out while I will allow people to also send final questions if they have questions. Nigerians will have questions till next week if we allow. So, all right, sir. So we'll wait for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, while we wait for Mr. Okoye to come back in, if you have other questions, final questions, pressing questions, please just send them in while we wait for him to return. Mr. Lucky Afenokai, you asked, is it possible to have more than one PVC, please? I think I can readily tell you that it won't happen, that once the same fingerprints show up on INEC system, that it cancels the more recent attempt at getting another PVC. So that is unlikely to happen. Engineer Dimba, you have suggestions with respect to areas of security red flags on how we can effectively take charge of such areas. You would like to speak directly to Mr. Okoye. We will send your request to Mr. Okoye as you've requested. I'm wondering if there are new, absolutely new questions that for us to deal with. Social media, we've been seeing threats by gun-wielding men warning people there'll be no elections in some areas, especially in the East. I think that's a very important question. And when Mr. Okoye comes back, we will ask them. There are people who want to thank National Association of Sea Dogs. Also want to ask if INEC will publish the exact locations or addresses of the polling units have been cancelled. Yes, they've actually published it, and it's circulated on WhatsApp, in newspapers, everywhere. So you could just ask around and you'll get a copy. I've got copies myself. It's how to pass it across to you. But I know that they did publish that. Why is the military not deployed for transportation on the ground for the safe locations to the PUs? That's a very good question. And when Mr. Okoye comes back, we definitely should ask that. What is INEC doing with respect to their staff and the political parties sometimes compromise to cause delays? I think we've asked really about their staff and how they're ensuring they weed out their bad eggs. So let's allow Mr. Okoye of that question. Yes, the big question about CBN fulfilling the cash funding, because right now CBN is overwhelmed. Just collecting 500 million naira from people, is it 500,000 naira at the very least from people? So yes, CBN is overwhelmed. Will CBN be able to recover in time for elections? That's a very critical question. Or will they be too distracted to pay attention during elections? No. Big question. The Southeast continues to be of concern to people. 2 election cycles ago, it was the Northeast. Now this is the Southeast. How do we deal with this? How do we ensure people, and not just indigenes, are able to vote? And so, yes, these are very, very critical questions. If people are scared away, no elections will take place. Very true. What are the guidelines regards disruption? Guidelines if elections are disrupted in a place before people can vote or while they're voting, what happens? So, it's a very valid question. So we'll ask that, but we don't have a lot of time left. So once Mr. Okoye is back, we will ask these questions, and hopefully we can all go to bed hoping that Nigeria has a peaceful election. I'm hesitant about asking him to switch off his video. You know, half of communication is in your face. So, and since we're already online, it's a little difficult. But we'll see when he gets back. If we still have the same internet problems, then we could ask him to. But he will be right back. So please stay on the line. Stay on the line. Stay on the line, people. Will the public be able to view the results online? And I think you mean, will they be able to view live results, viewing of live results? Well, on the question of the fuel scarcity, I think he's answered that, that NNPC has guaranteed INEC they will provide the fuel they need for elections for them. And on the issue of foreigners, I'm sure you also know that quite a number of foreigners have been rounded up, those who have PVCs and cleaning the register of the same people has been going on for a while. He's also spoken about underage voters and taking them out of the system. Guidelines pertaining to vote buying. And that would be the last one. So we'll just wait a little for Mr. Okoye to come back in, and we must be patient. The network has been amazing today, to put it mildly. But let me ask, while we wait for Mr. Okoye to come back, let me ask you, the audience, a very critical question. Do you think that INEC is ready for elections? Your personal opinion. Is INEC ready? Are Nigerians ready? Will elections, do you think, in your opinion, the elections will go smoothly on the 25th? While we wait for Mr. Okoye. I'm sorry, I will not be able to take the hands that are raised, so please use the chat function. Thank you. So answers are coming in. Yes, they are. Someone thinks that INEC is ready for elections. What kind of insurance or loss or damage cover does INEC have on materials that are being invested towards the presidential elections? And insurance coverage for its personnel. I know that he had mentioned that they've got life insurance for personnel, but it'd be nice to know what kind of insurance for material and equipment. So I think it's a total indemnity coverage for material and equipment. And I think they've answered these questions in previous elections, and I don't think that has changed. It is believed that election results will be transmitted electronically via the internet. What are the arrangements to ensure the network failures do not affect transmission? Obviously, the connection will vary by region. It's been experienced right now. Very, very true. But I think that's what he was trying to respond to, that they've got a dual system. So they've got the hard copy system and the electronic system, and that the electronic system eventually catches up when the internet improves. Just like if you were trying to send a message on WhatsApp and then your internet goes out, that when it eventually comes back up, that your message will eventually go, that kind of system, but a bit more advanced. How do you respond to your own question you have just asked? Oh. They have to push for elections to hold without postponement. Chat is disabled. No, chat is not disabled. You just type. That's how come I can read it. Question and answer. Maybe I meant for you to send your questions in, to write your response to in there. Oh, good to have you back, sir.
Thank you.
I have been entertaining Nigerians. I sang for them while you were gone.
Very, very important.
Very important, sir. So I'll just quickly go back to the questions, and we'll try to answer as fast as possible. I have one of my favorite persons here. I just asked the question, Mr. Ken Enshaw, is INEC in a position to prosecute politicians and persons who have participated in hateful speech and actions around elections? Also one of my favorite issues.
Yes, we have the capacity to do that, and we have the willpower to do that. But as I point out, for you to prosecute and prosecute successfully, there must be good investigation, and there must also be an arrest. The security agencies have the power to investigate. They also have the power to arrest. It is only when they investigate and arrest that the file is turned over to the Independent National Electoral Commission to prosecute. And you know that the quality of prosecution depends on the quality of investigation that has been carried out and the arrest that has been made. So I believe that as of today, we have the willpower, we have the capacity to prosecute. But our capacity in the sense of doing a good job is really, really limited, considering the quantum of issues that are on the table, and also considering the limited number of lawyers we have within the confines of the commission. So let us have faith and hope and pray and work assiduously to get into being the Electoral Offences Commission and Tribunal. That is the only way we can really break the cycle of impunity in this country and make sure that people pay when they engage in hate speech that have the capacity to lead to breakdown of law and order.
Thank you so much for that brilliant answer, sir. Another concern is about CBN, that CBN seems to be inundated right now, collecting 500,000 naira. That will they be prepared to meet up with the challenges of the elections themselves and of the materials? They seem very distracted right now.
Well, in terms of the materials, what is the central bank acts as a warehouse,
sure,
as a secure environment for our materials. Yesterday, I was at the central bank in Umuahia, where I went to, together with the resident electoral commissioner for Abia State, the administrative secretary, and other senior heads of department, where we went to inspect our materials to make sure that the right quantity has been delivered, and also to make sure that we have the materials for the different categories of election that we are supposed to run. So the staff that are in charge of the receipt of our materials from the Nigerian Air Force and those who are in charge of giving us what we have deposited are very, very few. And we do not get entangled in the politics of the central bank and the work they do. Our responsibility is to go and collect what we have given to them for safekeeping.
I have a quick joke about that and what Nigerians have entrusted to the banks for safekeeping and what's not coming out. But I'll keep that to myself. I will keep that to myself.
Our own will come out.
I say a loud amen. Now, there's another very important question was asked about I'm really enjoying how clear your network is now, about the guidelines on disruptions. So what happens when at a polling unit, voting is disrupted as people are casting their votes or just before they do? What happens in that instance? What does the law have to say about that?
What we do is that our guidelines and our regulations are drawn from the law. But you know, the law will not provide for every situation. So what we do is that we use the regulations and guidelines as a means of making sure that the lacuna in the law or what the lawmakers cannot provide in very clear terms, that we provide some level of clarity to them. Various situations present themselves, and we have very, very clear guidelines and regulations on how to deal with each situation. If communities prevent us from deploying the beavers, we give 0. If we have deployed the beavers and they disrupt the elections in that particular polling unit, we take it that the election has taken place and that all the political parties score 0. If we are unable to deploy on account of our own negligence, we go and redo the election. But I need to look at, you have to look at the guidelines to see the various situations that have been provided and what the presiding officers at that point in time are obligated to do when such a situation presents itself. But if, for instance, people maliciously and deliberately disrupt an election to make sure that votes are not returned from that particular place, we will go back and conduct that election. Definitely we will.
Okay, I think that's the answer we were looking for. People also want to know what will Nigerians be able to view the results live as they are being loaded on INEC's portal?
Definitely. Very soon, if you go on our website now, you will even see the 105 off-cycle elections we conducted and the results emanating from those off-cycle elections. You just say INEC results, INECresults.org. You just see it. So the only thing you need a smartphone, you need data, and you need the internet access for you to view the results that are coming in real time. So we encourage Nigerians. We have expanded the base of our INEC result viewing portal, considering the number of Nigerians we expect to log in on election day, so that the process is not slow. So we have expanded, and we have expanded well, and we are confident that the number of that we have the capacity to accommodate the number of Nigerians that will be interested in viewing election results in real time.
Yeah, that's good to know. On a final note on vote buying and the prevalence of vote buying, we found that, of course, you found that in a lot of the off-cycle elections. How will INEC handle this at the national level this year? And because it's also a very big issue this year.
You see this commission. I pointed out that we've been given the responsibility to organize, undertake, and supervise election. We also have responsibility for voters registration and the registration of political parties. If you also look at the Electoral Act, it gives us responsibility to conduct civic and voter education, and also to promote knowledge of sound democratic electoral practices, as well as conduct referendum when the need arises. But we have found out that we have also been given added responsibilities. The commission is a mini water board, because in all the registration areas, we have to provide GP tanks for our registration area centers and super racks. And we have to also buy buckets. So we are a mini water board. We also generate our own electricity. In other words, we provide generating sets to our 774 local government areas and the 8,809 registration areas. We provide generating sets. With the arrival of COVID, we became a mini pharmacy, because we also provide ventilated spirit. We are providing hand gloves and the rest of them. Now, with the issue of vote buying, it seems Nigerians also want us to have our own police force, our own military. But that is not going to happen. So what the commission has done is to re-engineer the configuration of the voting cubicle to make sure that when people are thumb printing, they thumb print in secret. And we have also banned the use of cameras and other electronic gadgets that have the capacity to take pictures at the level of the voting cubicles. But there's a problem and there's a challenge. The law is that we operate what we call the open secret voting system, open secret ballot. You thumb print in secret, but you vote in the open, because the law is that the moment a presiding officer is ready to commence election, that the presiding officer must show the empty ballot box to all those who are present, and it must remain in the full view of all present until voting ends. So it is the transition between the voting cubicle and the ballot box that sometimes creates the problem. So people are not supposed to expose how they have voted. But some political parties and some politicians keep on devising various means and various mechanisms of vote buying. And the more we try to improve the electoral process, the more they invent new issues and new mechanisms on how to buy votes. Some of them have gone digital in terms of vote buying. But we are collaborating with the various security agencies in terms of making sure that we keep the sanctity of the voting area away from vote buyers and vote merchants. But in every issue of vote trading, there's a willing buyer and a willing seller. But I think that it is unconscionable for any individual to exploit the poverty of our people and the vulnerabilities of our people in order to make them lose their conscience and vote in a manner that they don't want to vote. But I think that as we grow in our electoral process, our people must realize that that single PVC has power, that it has potency, and that it's not an ATM card and it's not an alternative ID card. That PVC has the capacity to change government. An ATM card can only give you money, but a PVC can give you good governance and can also change the governance structure in the country. So they must guard it jealously and also guide their votes jealously.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Okoye, and for answering all of these questions, particularly when I know that you've just returned from a trip, you must be exhausted, and you've still got an interesting 2 weeks ahead of you, 3 weeks ahead of you. Your final words to Nigerians as we begin to round up?
Nigerians should have faith in the electoral process. Nigerians should understand that this present commission has the Nigerian people as the base of the electoral process. This commission has no political party. This commission is not committed to any individual. Our commitment is to the people of this country. And we want to assure the people of Nigeria that we have the courage and we have the capacity to conduct free, fair, transparent, verifiable, and inclusive election. And we want to assure them that at the end of the day, their votes will count and their votes will be the only source of truth in relation to who gets elected and who does not get elected. But we want to counsel and advise that Nigerians should take keen interest in the electoral process, and wherever possible and whenever possible, they should engage in mandate protection, because election riggers only go to vulnerable communities. They don't go to communities where the people are vigilant and where the people are ready to protect their votes. So let us be confident in our ability to sustain our democratic process and our democratic heritage. And we can only sustain it if we imbibe the democratic spirit and if we allow fidelity to the rule of law and due process to be our watchword.
Thank you so much, sir. My personal thanks and the thanks of every person that is on this call. And I want to thank also the participants for staying on. But to close us off this evening, I'm going to invite the second vice president, programs and events of the National Association of Sea Dogs, who also doubles as a lead of our vote counts management, Mr. Esq Polami, to give the vote of thanks and closing remarks. Mr. Polami, over to you.
Thank you so much, Abby. It's been an interesting evening, and on behalf of the National Association of Sea Dogs, Irish Confraternity, the conveners, of course, of the votes count, as a civic engagement platform for citizen participation in governance. The management team of our votes count, I want to express our immense gratitude to Barrister Festus Okoye for his presence, his insightful presentation, but most especially for his openness in answering all of the troubling questions in great details. I'm certain that this has actually or definitely allayed some of the fears as we inch closer to the 2023 general elections. I cannot but thank the moderator, Abi, who continues to do immense works in the area of campaign hate speech and violence through the organization Global Rights Nigeria, for her professionalism in traversing the myriads of questions tonight, especially the standing in for Barrister Okoye very well in that short slabs. To the attendees, I want to say thank you. Not surprisingly, we have a lot of people from across the world, not just from Nigeria, for your interest in the improvement of Nigeria's electoral process. My gratitude and that of the Paris Confraternity to you. From the National Association of Sea Dogs, the Paris Confraternity, and the votes counts team, our pledge to the Nigerian nation state is to continue galvanizing efforts towards a credible electoral process in Nigeria and more voter participation in the process. Thank you all and have a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Okoye.
Thank you. I really appreciate
Good to see you, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Have a nice evening, and may Nigeria be great again in our time. Good night.
Thank you.
If you like that.